Deluded, I'm back again.
Come on, Ian, man. Come on.
People, Deluded, I'm back again. Thank you very much for tuning back in. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and of course, good night. To my Arsenal fans, excluding the draw with West Ham United, I hope you all had a great weekend, and I hope everyone in general has had a great weekend. You're all in good health and your family is doing well. And at the time of making this video early on Monday morning, hope you're all ready to attack the week. Do me a favor, please make sure you're subscribing, you're commenting, most importantly, smash the like button, help drive the engagements. Now, as I just alluded to, we drew, we bottled a 2-goal lead for the second game in succession now away from home. West Ham United 2, Arsenal 2. And as I said, you have to give credit to West Ham. They're fighting for their lives. They dealt with the setbacks of being 2 goals down. And maybe if they created more chances, they could have nicked it. Now we're going to dissect the game. Evidently, you have to, if it was a boxing match, there's no point winning the boxing match. You have to actually win it, really and truly. And if West Ham, like Liverpool, if West Ham Arsenal was a boxing analogy, we was jabbing, we was overcut, we was under, uppercuts, we was hitting them with some serious blows, but we didn't we didn't land that knockout killer blow to ultimately win the fight. And anytime you do that, you provoke inspiration in the opposition. Again, when you're playing the 12th man, and Liverpool's one thing with the greatest of respect to West Ham. But at the business end of the season, playing away from home with a team that is in great away form, it is disappointing. It is disappointing to bottle leads from a winning position, definitely at this crucial period in the season. Whether that's we're not at a level that some Arsenal fans paint us to, I'm not sure. I'm going to cover that in some other videos. I've got some videos to do today, so yeah, please let me know your thoughts, check out the reactions and all of that sort of stuff. But let me share my screen with you lot. Now, first 20 minutes is the only real positive. 25 minutes or so, I'd say 25 at max, half an hour. Everything changed from the build-up that led to their first goal, but we're going to get into it. We start, as we've shown, we can start fast, we can put teams under pressure. There's a lot of positives Arteta and these players have introduced to this Arsenal team this season. Unfortunately, football's a 90-minute game. No point being good for 20 minutes if you're not going to, for all the sustained pressure, going to kill the opposition. And it was lovely first 20 odd minutes, really. Even Tierney's flying forward. We've got West Ham tried to be aggressive at the very start. We took the sting out of that. We had them camped in there off. We're playing some great attacking moves from back to front. Everyone looks like they're in for it. It's a nice day in London at the London Stadium. We know Odegaard's up for it. So yeah, we put them under sustained pressure for the first goal. Let's ignore the right hand side of the screen and focus on this. We put them under pressure. Several players were involved. Crucially, Odegaard's pull it across, and I've obviously aired some players to make it a bit easier to understand. White's pull it across for the cutback, and like we do, Jesus taps into an open net. We know we don't really put crosses in the air like that. We're more, pull it across the floor. So we started well, slick move. It was all great, it was great, and this is what we've been seeing all season. 1 goal, that was good. 2 goal made it better, really and truly. If you look at it, it was a great bit of play from us with everybody involved. Again, they tried to press us. It didn't work. Tierney was in that role. I think he went to Gabriel, went back to Holding. Holding completely skipped out White and Saka, punched it into Odegaard, who was slightly further forward. It then went to Saka. Saka gave it to Jesus. If you lot remember correctly, at that point, Martinelli's pull it, it's been switched to Martinelli. Now, I'm not going to focus on it because it didn't work, but Martinelli with the outside of his foot put a cross in. It was cut out, really. But this is one thing about footballers, and for young players out there, don't just sit and admire your pass, get involved. Again, not to scale, but West Ham have gone to sleep, really. And that when you look at the marking for the 2 goals from West Ham and the areas we took up, I think Mikel Arteta probably would have saw that in the pre-game and told his players to creep round the back. So yeah, Odegaard's continued his run. Again, not to scale people because this diagram isn't the smartest, but Martinelli's then pull it back across. Obviously, Odegaard's made the run. We've tapped into the back of an empty net. 2-0. At 2-0, the next goal is vital, but right now it's looking like we could score a few. Like David Moyes was saying, he was saying 20 minutes. I thought, my goodness. And again, you've got to be able to come to these grounds. As an Arsenal fan, I know we've beaten West Ham a lot of times, but I'm always nervous against West Ham, because especially away, because they provide games like this. I'd say West Ham away, Man United away, the Etihad, Anfield, there's a St. Mary's. These are the grounds that Arsenal struggle at, and we could do a lot better. And again, we have done well on the road. Even in defeats, there's been some positives to take, but again, especially when you've got 3 points in the bag, you need to go and kill the opposition, because we can talk about atmosphere like at Anfield or at the London Stadium, which obviously fans play a part, but for periods of this game, the fans were irrelevant when you're doing your job and putting them under pressure. Fans are going to be as confident or as nervous based on what they see on the football field. Same way Arsenal is rocking half the time. There's been times we've been nervous because that is what we're seeing with the players. So we've got to just simply be a lot more street smart. And that doesn't just go for the young players. It's all of the players, whether they're in their latter 20s, approaching 30s, or young lads out there, really, especially at this point in the season where a lot of the mistakes and positives we've been making have been there. But with what Arsenal are allegedly fighting for, I don't look at the league table. These things are going to be highlighted. So, yeah, 2 goals ahead. Again, Ings, a couple of players weren't starting here, neither Ings and Obona. I don't know why they're there, actually. I think this was, I prepared this pre-game. That's more meant to be Kahir and obviously Paqueta, really. So, yeah, we're laughing 2 goals up. The problem is, we're starting to make mistakes. And for the large period of the first half, we're on top. The sun's shining. West Ham aren't really giving a threat. The outballs Antonio. I think we're winning that sort of battle. But again, mistakes change games. And this is probably where the game went left. We allowed that West Ham to go into halftime with a bit of inspiration. First 20, 25 minutes. And again, credit to West Ham. We should have scored more goals and kept doing what we're doing and went up the gears to the point where David Moyes says, you know what, it's now time to focus on next week. But we let them get a goal in the 33rd minute, just short of 15 minutes before halftime. You already know what's going to be said in the dressing room, and they came out on smoke. But it was an unprovoked error, in my opinion. Initially, if you lot remember, we're disjointed because Gabriel's gone out there to deal with Antonio. He's found Holding. Holding's giving it to Tini, if you lot remember correctly. Xhaka's gone slightly further up. West Ham have again become a bit narrow. To be fair to them, they've got back in their shape relatively quickly. Now again, we're kind of disjointed and a bit at 6s and 7s defensively, and Partey's eventually gone to show for it. Now 9 times out of 10, Partey flicks it over Rice's head, then we get away with it. Unfortunately, this was the one time it didn't. Rice has won the ball. Obviously, Paqueta is latched onto it. Rice has picked Thomas Partey's pocket. He's found Paqueta. Again, not to scale people. He's found Paqueta. Gabriel and Holding are disjointed. Gabriel's slid and then tried to pull back his knee. It is a penalty. Paqueta is playing for it. Again, we've got to be able to do that nastiness. Lacazette used to do it. Jesus does it. We've got to be able to. We gave them an option. Prevention's better than cure. Whether it's a handball from Rice, which I think it is, but I also think it don't. I'll leave that to the ref. We need to control the variables we can. Prevention's better than cure. If Partey doesn't do that, if Gabriel doesn't half slide, and I'm a bit more generous to Gabriel than Partey because we're reacting now, it is what it is. But instead, cleaned out penalty, the penalty's put in, it's now 2-1. Now, that's cool. But again, if 2-0, if the next goal is vital at 2-0, the next goal is even more vital at 2-1, really. And ultimately, West Ham came out on smoke and we weren't really. I'm very disappointed with this goal because West Ham started well. This all originated initially from a throw-in, in my opinion. We've dealt with the first threat. Gabriel's headed it out. Again, I'm focusing just purely on our back line, and there are other players. Half players have stepped out. White and Holding are keeping people on side. Kahir's just pull it back into the box. And Bowen's stayed on side and read it, really and truly. Tierney, everybody else nowhere to be seen. It's a good instinctive finish to the near post, really. It's 2-2. 2 points are dropped. Again, we could have scored a penalty and nicked it like we could have done on the counter-attack against Liverpool. On the margins of things, a draw is a fair result. West Ham gave as good as they got after giving us the luxury of the first half an hour. Ultimately, we should have killed the game. There's been times, even Brighton this season away from home, where we was quality. We put them to the sword. We allowed them to grow into the game, and then, they scored and they made it a bit nervous. So again, the positives and negatives of what we've been doing this season have been evident. I know with football being an emotive sport that when you win, nobody really focuses on this, but it's the margins. Definitely when you're fighting a team allegedly like Man City. So we shot ourselves in the foot. Ultimately, we let ourselves down, really, and we've got no complaints, essentially. Apparently Gabriel Jesus has now scored 9 Premier League goals this season, 4 of which have come in his last 3 appearances. I think he's got 3 starts since his return from injury. So there is somewhat of a positive. Our remaining fixtures sees us play Southampton at home, Manchester City away, Chelsea at home, Newcastle away, Brighton at home, Nottingham Forest away, and Wolves at home. Now, it's not impossible, but it's probably improbable. For me, again, the problem is on another day, Arsenal have done enough to win a league title. The problem is you're playing Manchester City where they're near enough perfect. And it's really testament to them that they haven't been the most perfect version of Man City. But I would be here all day praising City. The fact that they're still here. Arsenal are still allegedly top of the table with a points gap, but again, the hunters, which we have started this season, are now the hunted, and you can start to see the pressures. Again, I've always said I think we're an improved defensive side, not necessarily a good defensive side, and I think that is now starting to come to the fray as well. But we're going to have to do it the hard way. Arsenal have conceded 19.4% of their goals in the Premier League this season in the last 4 games alone. So that's come at the wrong time. But that's arguably been there all season. You know, you go back to Leeds away, for example, where Gabriel and Ramsdale were in the trenches. So we can't act like these defensive frailties, whether Saliba is there or anyone's missing or not, hasn't been there, because we've seen not really a different lineup, but there's been several different players, and there's been more or less identical defensive mistakes. Fair enough, it's not necessarily set pieces at this moment in time, but there has been times it's been set pieces, it's been dead ball scenarios, it's been switching off on the transition. Everyone concedes these goals, is football, but again, we have to look at fine margins. Arsenal dropped points from winning positions in the Premier League this season. In the whole of August, September, October, November, December, January, February, and March combined, only 4 points. In April alone, we've dropped 4 points, and it's in the best of case, that just shows you how far we've come this season as a club, that we're forgetting where we actually were, but it's come at the wrong time, essentially. Arsenal have now squandered 2-goal leads at Liverpool and West Ham in consecutive weeks. So while it's 4 points dropped, it feels like 6, really. It feels like we've been robbed. The probability of winning the Premier League this season, based on the prediction model from Opta Joe, it is saying 65.6% Man City and 34.4% for Arsenal, people. Again, football isn't one with supercomputers. It probably wouldn't have been kind to Arsenal's title challenges or maybe prospects of top 4 in August. So things are subject to change according to data available. But yeah, it looks like it won't quite be a fairy tale. The top 10 players for number of involvements in open play shot ending sequences in the Premier League this season. Odegaard, who got his 11th, I believe, and obviously Bukayo Saka are quite high up there. Commiserations to Saka for missing his penalty. We go again, simple as that. Again, Arsenal have given up a 2-goal lead in consecutive Premier League games for the first time. We're only the 5th side in the competition's history to do so. Pressure, as it says there. Arsenal have given away a penalty in consecutive Premier League games for the first time since September 2019, where it was 3 games in a row. And again, it's more the transition and the sequences of errors that led to that, really. Odegaard has 8 goals away from home in the Premier League this season, the most ever by an Arsenal player in a single season in the competition. Who said he doesn't turn up away from home? And West Ham should be extra happy, because it's the first time they've come back from 2-0 down, people, to claim a point since October 2020, where they also did it in a London derby against a fellow North London side. So yeah. Only 2 sides have had 2 or more players concede multiple penalties in the Premier League this season. Bournemouth and Arsenal. Gabriel and William Saliba are on 2. And to be fair with you, Holding's given one away. And I thought, watching the game again, it gave me goosebumps. I thought we gave away a penalty again, but it didn't happen. As you know, Martinelli has been, prior to the game, he was directly involved in 9 goals in his last 8 Premier League appearances with 2 assists and 7 goals. It's now up to 10 goal involvements in his last 9. So as much as I feel Trossard should have been introduced early, and Trossard maybe could count himself unlucky not to really start the game, I can't really argue why Jesus and Martinelli are there. Saka will always start games for me. I understand, the talking points with Saka and things, but I'm sure a lot of you get the point. Smash the like button, offer your opinions. Again, people, you look at Jesus, he's got 178 appearances in the Prem, 67 goals and 34 assists. You're too good not to have 100 Premier League goals one day. Only 3 teams have conceded more penalties in the Premier League than Arsenal this season. Nottingham Forest have 8, Bournemouth have 7, Brighton have 6. With the exception of Brighton, it's not really the company you want to be around, essentially, for anything. Arsenal have conceded 14 goals in their first 18 Premier League games this season, and that equates to 0.78 per game. In the last 12 and a half matches, we've shipped 16, which is 1.28 per game. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I saw that we've conceded 31 goals. And ain't we played, so I'm not too sure. In fact, let me go back to here. I don't know how true this is, people. For this season, Premier League statistics, we've played 31 matches. We've scored 74 and we've conceded 31. So my maths is poor, but if we played 31 and conceded 31, ain't that like we're shipping a goal a game or something along them lines? I could be wrong. But again, we're an improved defensive side, not a good defensive side. And until we want to keep clean sheets as much as we want to put these silky passes together, you know, I don't think we're going to really go to the level we can. And we do need to address midfield and probably need another striker. You've seen the last 2 times, Jesus was flat out gassed in that second half. After being it was a joy to watch Jesus. He was everywhere, deep line playmaker, left wing, up front, everywhere, even participated in one of the moves for the goals. But we need a different option, maybe a more physical man and the ability to go a bit more direct at times. So yeah, it is what it is. It don't make for playing good reading at some periods, people. So there you have it. Essentially, Bowen has scored against Arsenal in each of his last 3 Premier League games at the London Stadium. He loves it. Bring him with Declan Rice. Arsenal are top of the table. If they win all their games or draw at the Etihad and win the other 6, they'll be champions. Easier said than done. Easier said than done. For me, we needed 6. We needed to chase perfection. Perfection would have been 6 points from West Ham United and Southampton. We've got no choice but to count our blessings. Definitely for the Liverpool game and West Ham, that maybe it could have went left another way. We need to beat Southampton. And you getting a point, let alone 3 against City, is another thing, really. And City have not played them 8 games, but we need to focus on Friday. It's improbable versus impossible. I don't think Arsenal are winning the league, but it's still a decent season. Again, I just don't think we're cut from it. Either Arsenal or City will become the 4th team to not win the Premier League from a situation where they've had 70 or more points at this stage of a Premier League season. It's crazy. All 3 of those runners-ups finished second to Man City. City's bad news for the Prem. Only 18 teams, have previously ever earned 70 or more points after 30 games of a Premier League campaign. 15 of those have gone on to win the title. 3 have finished runners-up. So there you have it. That's more of a follow-up to what we see here. When you look at Man City's points in the final 8 Premier League games of last 5 seasons, boy, 19, 24, 18, 15, and 20. Scary, isn't it, really and truly? So we'll have to see. Have I missed out any other points, essentially, people? It's just ultimate street smartness. In terms of positives from that game, Jesus continues his decent form, as does Martinelli in terms of statistics. We put together some silky passes in the first 20, 25 or 30 minutes, really. Again, we've lost the game at crucial periods, under 15 minutes before the end of the first half once again, and within the first 10 minutes of the second half. These are crucial periods and emotional periods that you need to really do better. So, yeah, in terms of added on to that, I think, we're not as good as we have been defensively earlier in the season. Again, I don't think we killed the hope of the West Ham players, the manager, David Moyes, or the fans. I think we got very complacent. I don't think this team thinks we're City. I don't think we think we're an aura, but it's like we do the good things all week. We start well, we put teams to the sword, and then we sit off and just assume that the teams are going to feel sorry for themselves, where you need to make it impossible for a team to get back in the game. So, yeah, I think we got complacent. I think we stopped playing our game. I think, there were good things, at points. West Ham were chasing shadows. First 25 minutes, we made 125 passes to their 26. I think Holding and Gabriel were winning their battles against Antonio, and we had them in their own half, but these things weren't there all the time. In terms of improvements, I'm not going to sit here and blame Holding. I'm going to do another video on it because he does not pick himself. He does not assemble this squad. I'll defend anyone that plays for Arsenal, They'll always go out there as good as they can. Evidently, Holding is not what we need and can't really help us if we keep on this trajectory. But it's not just Holding's fault, really. Yes, we've had a lot of injuries, but in August, this could be a thing, essentially. I think we're playing too nice with teams. We're playing with our dinner versus savaging. We've got to either kill games or manage games better and ultimately get 3 points. We have to learn to play without the ball much better and how to absorb teams. There were times where I think we needed to take the sting out of the game in the second half, if I'm completely honest with you. In relation to Mikel Arteta, it is another game where I'm kind of wanting a bit more from our subs. I think Jorginho brought something, but, Smith Rowe was a super sub. When he weren't starting last season, he was scoring goals. And I know he's had injury issues, but if he's fit to be on the bench, surely he's there. Eddie and Ketty are bringing him on 88th minute. I guess it adds to the appearances you made all season, but it's not really on the field long enough to affect the game. Fair enough, Trossard was always going to come on. I'm not saying to bring on Nelson, but I would have thought to gamble on that. I'm not saying Odegaard or Jesus didn't need to come off, but 2 crucial players to our system and 2 of our most experienced players in these moments, it gives faith to other players, but I'm a bit baffled as to why they've been hauled off in the last 2 games, if I'm honest with you. Ultimately, at the business end of the season, it's the second game in a row we've bottled, really and truly. Maybe the players are feeling the pressure. I don't think we're being street smart enough and learning the lessons from the previous week. So yeah, man. Ultimately, that's where we went wrong. And as I said, on the balance of things, West Ham more than deserved to get something out of the game. We had 11 shots, they had 16. We had 5 on target, they had 3. We had 72% of the ball to 28, and it depends what you do with the ball. We made 601 passes to 226. Now West Ham knew they would concede possession and passes, but away from that, shots on target, corners where they've had 7 to our 2, they did enough, more than enough to get something. So West Ham, who are turning their form around, can actually be happy with themselves, really. And if I'm them, ultimately it's how the game unraveled from when we went 2 goals up. But for West Ham, a bit like Liverpool last week, you're probably thinking, boy, there's Arsenal are creating something good. But if we didn't start the game like that, where would we have been, really and truly? I don't know how much you lot will be able to see this, people. But again, just in terms of my Google Doc sheet, my scraps, when you look at courtesy of Sofa Score, again, I don't think this is the kindest to you. Zooming in a bit, the average position reports. Now, we know we're quite a narrow team, but you can see ever so slightly, our centre backs are slightly deeper. That's obviously because we have to play with holding slightly deeper and we're limited. And last week, I did think maybe that was a reason as to why Benjamin White and Saka weren't doing the business on the right. They were involved in the first half, so it doesn't really mean anything. But yeah, that we're probably playing into West Ham's hands in this regard, essentially. And Gabriel kind of had to do a lot of stuff because he had to fill over there, really. Jesus was dropping deep. Martinelli's trying to hold width. So there is a lot of improvements we can make, but ultimately it's the business end of the season. We failed to react from Liverpool, and West Ham and Liverpool away, they're difficult grounds. A point isn't the worst thing, but with everything considered, with the context, with the fact that we scored 4 goals in the opening halves of these games, collectively, it's disappointing, but we've got no choice but to keep going. Please let me know your thoughts, comment, subscribe, do all of that good stuff. I'll see you lot soon.
Thank you very much.